like to welcome everybody today to the first ever, I think I can say this confidently, square table discussion. We're here to talk about the business of creativity, more so through the lens of commercial production, how ideas are formed, how they're sold, why they excel, why they fly, why they die. I mean, it's a pretty busy, chaotic industry for sure. Things happen very quickly. And we're here with three esteemed directors to talk about their own personal experiences in the commercial industry. Probably some nuggets of wisdom and personal experience to kind of add to the dialogue here. But let's start by just having them introduce themselves. I can tell you a little bit about who they are and the type of work that they direct. So start over here.
My name is Danyal. I'm a director photographer from Brampton, and I think a little bit of my work is just I like to just tell stories and just capture moments. I've done a couple of commercial work for Raptors, Canon, I think Aritzia as well too. Yeah, Aritzia and other stuff like that. But for me, it's just like telling stories, having fun, you know.
All right, I'm Danyal A.M. Rosenberg. I'm a director based in Toronto, writer as well. A lot of cameras here. I'm not used to being on this side of it, so do I look at this one or that one?
Yeah,
that one?
Yeah.
This one?
As you wish. Yeah, this will be
I'll look at this one. Hello. Director based in Toronto. Got my start with music videos and then into commercials. Direct a lot of commercial work as well as scripted, longer form stuff. Love telling stories as well. That's probably going to be a common thread. And happy to be here today.
My name is Courtney. I'm a director also based in Toronto, specializing mostly in the commercial world, but always trying to, take time into narrative projects, passion projects when I can. Specializing mostly in like the documentary and sport kind of niche. Obviously love telling stories as well.
Mm-hmm. Is that, it's funny, I heard you guys chatting in the kitchen over there. Kevin, you were talking about how you ran into someone who said that commercials aren't real storytelling or something like that. Like what was that dialogue like? Because I think storytelling comes in all different shapes and forms, and commercial work is at its heart storytelling. But is there a difference there, something particular about storytelling in a commercial format?
Yeah, I think to your point, I was speaking to a young gentleman at a mixer event, and when he found out I direct commercials, he kind of stuck his nose up and thought that was kind of beneath him, I think. Yeah. And I remember he said to me, he was like, why?
He doesn't have any bills to pay, I guess.
Yeah, something like that, eh? I had said to him, I was like, look, it can also serve as a creative exercise. I also just like advertising. I went to school for business administration. I've always found advertising and marketing fascinating. But even beyond that, like when I was a kid, me and my friends would take our VHS camcorder and like make fake commercials. We'd make like Pepsi and Coke commercials and like skate commercials. And so I was saying to this guy, I was saying, commercials can be like an interesting sort of creative experiment sometimes in the sense that you're basically being given a project that you have very little control over in terms of like what the subject matter is. And sometimes that can be interesting in terms of trying to fit within a box and try to do something that's like, it's like a challenge kind of, right? So like I recently directed a commercial for Curling Canada, and they came to us and they said, we're looking for like a 30-second broadcast spot, and we want curling to look like the NHL or the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, exactly. And but to me, I'm like, that's awesome. Like I love that project, because for me, it's like, okay, now how do I make curling exciting? With all due respect to curlers, it's not the most like visually compelling sport, right? So I was like, okay, how do we make this interesting? So in that sense, commercial directing, I think, is super fulfilling, and there's some amazing stuff out there in like the branded content world, and you look at some of the stuff that like Nicholas Larson does for like Mercedes and Volvo. Now he's at TIFF with a feature film premiere. There are like very legitimate filmmakers in the commercial industry that are making awesome stories. So yeah, it's different, but I don't think it's like any less creative or any less impressive.
Mm-hmm. Danyal, do you find that, especially if you're doing something for TV, like the fact that there is a sandbox that you need to play in by way of kind of length and just format, does that help or hinder you when you're trying to tell a 30-second story, 15-second story, 6-second story? How do those confines actually kind of enable the process to?
Yeah, I
to
think
take
it's
off?
all different, right? Like I don't see one as being like easier than the other, or one necessarily being more challenging. It's like I think sometimes having parameters helps you creatively, like having a, as you say, like a sandbox to play in and knowing the parameters of what you need to do. So if it's a 30-second story, a commercial or an ad that I'm doing, then I have to think about that differently, of how I get that message across quickly. If it's like a 30-minute project or an hour film, it's like, you have a lot more time. So it's a different challenges, but all fun. And I mean, I think we're all here, we like challenges, right? It's not easy. So, yeah. Does that answer the question?
Hey, it's open-ended, right? I don't think there's right or wrong here. And Danyal, just really, other Danyal, talk to me a little bit about clients, even in the commercial or branded content format, how they talk about wanting to retain people's attention, and our attention spans are so short, and we need to open with a hook or something to that effect. How do those strategies, those storytelling strategies, ultimately play on camera and in storytelling? Does that stuff actually matter, or are these just buzzwords that advertisers like to throw around?
They definitely do matter. I think it's just like, as a director, it's on you to find different ways to engage your audience, whether it's like a story or just a camera movement. I think a lot of people, when they're scrolling through your Instagram, they see something like moving a certain way they're not used to, or whatever technique you want to bring into it that could enhance or just tell your story. I think that's like the idea. So I find nowadays with like clients asking for like stuff like a hook or whatever to get their audience engaged, or TikTok or whatever the hell, I think it's just like a little bit. I find myself thinking about like different ways to just have like camera movement and stuff like that, like investing in like grip teams and stuff. I think that's like the big movement for me. So, yeah.
And can you talk to me a little bit about kind of diving right into the actual kind of sales and production process when it comes to working with ad agencies versus working directly with brands? Are there different opportunities there or different challenges when there's someone in between you and the brand?
Definitely, because a lot of the clients you work with, they're not really like, I don't want to say creatively inclined, but they don't really understand what goes into the films we create and what we're trying to communicate and how we're trying to sell their brand. So you got to kind of package whatever creative or treatment you're working on in a way that like is very digestible for someone outside of film. Thinking outside of the box and not just thinking in the way that like you understand, because we all understand film and like cameras and stuff like that, but a lot of people don't at all. They just have their iPhones, and that's not a problem. That's not a knock on them, but it just makes your job a little harder. But that's what times are. It's evolving, It's not so stay stagnant, so it's a good thing in my eyes.
Mm-hmm. And Kevin, what is it about working with agencies that empowers your work? Like, do they make your work better? Do they? Some chuckles around. Yeah. Do they make your work better? Do they get in the way of an idea that you're trying to execute? Like, ultimately, how much of a teammate are ad agencies in the commercial process? Perhaps it varies depending on the agency and the folks involved. But talk to me a little bit about how those relationships enable both kind of creativity, productivity, efficiency, and I guess ultimately outcomes and results.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's definitely both. Like, sometimes it can be a help, sometimes it can be a hindrance. I think it's a personalities thing. I think it depends on who you're working with. I think the most important thing is for all parties to be able to set ego aside and like try to get aligned on trying to create the best possible film. And sometimes you get someone who, you get on nowadays, like you get on a Zoom and it's like you immediately creatively gel and you're like, okay, this is great. This is somebody who I can lean on as well, and I can like look to for creative ideas and actually trust that they have, this is gonna sound pretentious, but like trust that they have good taste.
Not pretentious at all.
But then, there are other times where someone might, have less experience in production, and they might get obsessed with an idea and they can't let that go, or they have a certain way they want to leave their mark on the piece. And I get that. Like, I had an experience. I don't want to say like too much so the person knows that I'm talking about them. But one time a client came on and they brought their own camera, and they were obsessed with getting this specific shot on their camera. And I was like, that's just not how it works. So like in that sense, it's a hindrance. And also like while we were on set, I'm directing, we're working with actors, I'm trying to direct them in a way that they like to be directed, and this agency person was coming in and trying to direct, and it was making our day take twice as long. So I think it just depends. Like I've had really awesome experiences with agencies where you get to work with people who have great ideas, are open to helping facilitate you creating the best thing possible. And then I've had situations where people almost resent that they're not the one directing. And so sometimes they're a little less lenient with letting you have creative control.
Danyal, do you have, I don't want to ask if you have a preference, but can you talk to me about one example of either working directly with a brand or working with a producer at an agency where it's like, hey, you guys just gelled and it actually made for a better outcome than you could have probably accomplished on your own?
Well, I think I can also speak to like the differences first. That kind of frames that for me. I find that if I'm working with an agency, often the creative is already kind of fleshed out. There's already a pretty good creative there. If I'm working with a brand, often I'm involved in the pitching of the idea itself, right? So it's like, if I'm working directly with the brand, then I'm usually at the creation phase, the ideation phase. I'm really like, often the like sky's the limit, right? They might have a bit of a campaign or a kind of blue sky idea, but like anything's possible there. So for me, that really stretches, and I'm able to use the other parts of me, the writer part of me, the creative part of me, outside of directing. If I'm working with an agency, often it's part of a campaign. So this is a 30-second spot to fit within something that already is being worked on or has already elements made to it. Or sometimes, and even within that, there's variations, right? Some agency, it's like, here's the boards, here's the storyboards for the commercial that are already put together. We've had an artist do those. We want you to do this. And then it's really an exercise in execution. I'm still usually hired because of my vision and my ability to take an idea and elevate it, but the idea itself is there. Other agencies, sometimes they're like, here's the campaign, what do you have for it, right? But to me, those are like the big differences in those two things. And then I've had great experiences in both ways, right? I think we've worked together, and in some of the stuff that we've worked together, it's almost been like the best of both worlds, where I've been able to work with you in helping to design the creative. That's part of a bit of a larger campaign, but I'm in early. So I love that. Me as a director, I love to be in early.
What do you think?
Totally agree.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes, same as what Danyal said, it's just they already have the creative lined out, so it's just for you to execute it. It's kind of like you're a producer, but you're producing like the picture as a director, in a weird way.
I don't know if you guys find this, like there are some times like totally where you get storyboards already done, and yeah, it's an exercise in execution. But I find sometimes when you get given a brief, the client almost, or even the agency, almost like wants you to come forward with your own ideas. Like I've found my most success pitching where I kind of take like a left turn to what I've been given, where I'm like, okay, this is what they've presented me, but like I actually think this might be cool to do. And I think people are really receptive to that. And like you said, Danyal, at the end of the day, you're being hired for your vision. And like if you have convictions like that and you're like, okay, that's really cool, but like also I think this would be dope, I think people will respect you more and like appreciate you as a director because you have your convictions and because you want to make what you think is the best idea, and you're not just like a day manager who's gonna.
Absolutely. I'd say the best agencies are the ones that are collaborative, right? That they might have a great like package and storyboards already done, but like you're saying, they want you to come and bring your own ideas, and often they will have references and they'll have things that they like, but again, you're being hired for hopefully what you are able to do in your body of work. So it's like, what of your style are you bringing in? And then it's a bit of a balancing act of, okay, you have your style, you have your way, but also they have theirs and what they're selling through. So it's a bit of a dance in that way too. And I think that the more you do it, you get to know when is a good time to bring an idea and to stretch it or push it or take it on that left turn, and when it's like, no, this is exactly what they want. They've sold this through to the client. You know, I'm here to do a very specific thing and do that thing really, really well.
Yeah, definitely pick and choose your
Yeah.
moments with that. Yeah.
Danyal, have you ever had to make a decision, because let's say we're short on time, and we usually are, just
Yeah,
in
all the
general,
time.
on any day, on any given day, where it's like you have this idea in your head, like the creative isn't necessarily fully baked, like maybe it's kind of doc style, there's some room for exploration, where you're like, hey, I need to make a decision right now. I think this will be a great idea. I know we haven't discussed it as a group, but here we are. Talent is only available for another 20 minutes, and I want to use 10 of those minutes per se, or the whatever the item is that we're short on time planning around. We're like, I'm going to do it, and then you knocked it out of the park. And I just want to hear about perhaps the moment in which you decided to eat up valuable time to do something that wasn't necessarily pre-approved, but in your mind you're like, no, this is a great option for a piece of the puzzle, and you said, hey guys, just trust me, let me try this, I know you're going to love it. Is that, I should ask, have you experienced moments like that, and if so, did it lead to positive outcomes, or did people kind of cringe when you're asking to borrow some time?
A little bit of both. We're shooting a video for Hawaii Mighty, and I think Parkdale, this club called AMPM, we rented out for a whole day. And it was a really cool video set. We had like 50 BG and stuff like that. Everyone was dancing. It was a whole ass vibe. It was cool. But we kept hazing this set because we just needed more haze. Like that was the thing. Like, okay, we need more haze. It needs to be more smoky. It's like a party. So we kept hazing and hazing and hazing. And I was like so excited with the picture and like the quality that we're getting out of like the energy of the actors and stuff like that, that we completely forgot to turn off the smoke alarm. So when the smoke alarm goes off, luckily it doesn't like wet everything, but like we had to shut down production for like an hour. Fire trucks came and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, it's not a problem. And then I found out that there's another $1,500 out of production just for that. But it looked great. It looked great. Like it did look great. They're like, hey, like we're pissed, but like whatever. So like sometimes you just gotta go with the flow for sure and not really think about it, or just like not pay attention to your AD a little bit, you know? And just go for it, you know? Like, we're creating, at the end of the day, like, we're creating pictures, creating movies, creating like moments that'll stay with people and like their families. So yeah, we're trying to just go for it for sure.
A question, like an open-ended question, whoever wants to take this one, and you know, you can choose your words as carefully as you'd like, but what are some red flags that exist in the commercial sales production process that resonate with you, that you catch right away? And the framing here is that, you know, I think projects can die all the way up until the day before they go to camera. And for me, like when we get to a shoot day, it's the best. Like to be on set is the most fun. Getting to work collaboratively, like that's the best part of the process. But have you noticed any trends in projects that don't end up making it to camera, where you're like, yeah, I've seen this before, and you kind of have your guard up, and maybe you're not circling the day on your calendar in pen, like maybe the shoot day is circled in pencil because you're noticing something
just
about
budget.
Yeah.
Like we're in a recession. Like no one's spending money. It's just budget. Sometimes like there's budget allotted for certain things, and you come to it and it's not there. So that's the biggest challenge as a filmmaker, and it kind of goes back to what we were saying about like just finding more interesting ways to like engage our audience, because if we can't do it, why are they gonna spend so and so money if no one's watching it? Like they're not stupid either, and everyone's losing money. So for me, I think like I try not. I'm hopeful, but I even then too like well even option like, okay, if this costs too much, let's go like a cheaper route. Let's do like a 2-for-1 or whatever the fuck.
That's all good.
My fault.
This is an 18+ rating.
Yeah, my fault.
Any red flags you've seen, Kevin?
Yeah, for me, it's more coming on like the direct to brand side. I think usually like agencies, by the time they approach, don't get me wrong, like I don't, like you say, like I'm not counting a day until we're actually on set. Yeah. But I think for the most part, like if an agency inquires and like we've been taking the necessary steps leading up, like something's gonna happen. There are exceptions. But for me, I've had a lot of experiences where it'll be work direct to brand, and the biggest red flag is when brands have this big grand idea of what they want and the budget doesn't align at all.
Yeah. Can't do anything with that.
Yeah, and Yeah, I'm thinking of a specific instance where, you know, someone will lay out, they'll be like, okay, so like we start in a kitchen and then we're in a field and then we're at a waterfall and then we're like in a gym, and I'm like, okay, like this is okay, like adding it up in my head, kind of like doing the costs. And it's like, that's never gonna happen for like 10K. Like it's, so yeah, being able to discern like who's serious. And then sometimes those people don't even actually know if they wanna do something, they just wanna talk about it. So being able to discern like who's serious, who's not, I think having like good producers to partner with are like really key in sussing those out and like relaying to the brand that like what they're looking for is probably impossible, or that they really need to change what they're looking for. So yeah, I would just say like unrealistic expectations a lot of the times ends up meaning it's not going to happen.
But is it expectations, like based on where it is in the process, right? Might be early days and like the budget isn't locked yet, and so from a pitching standpoint, like seeking an opportunity, showcasing your idea, isn't in the back of your head you're thinking to yourself, well, if I just talk them into why it's a great idea, what it's going to cost, and why there's value, do those red flags deter you from taking it as far as you can in the sales process, or do you find it's a better strategy to just be upfront with someone agency side to say, hey, like you got to talk to them about money right away, because there's no point of going down this road if they don't even have at least a range in mind of what's possible? Because I think everyone, great ideas are, when a client gets excited about an idea, they can then talk finance or whatever into the money, but it's such an interesting game of, I don't know if it's a tug of war or poker or what it is, but you know, getting someone excited about an idea can be the difference between it happening or not. But at the same time, you don't want to waste anybody's time, or at your own, especially by taking them all the way down the road to realize that there was never even an additional penny. You know.
Yeah, I think that's one as well, where you have to like pick and choose, and on a case-by-case basis kind of suss out like, is there even any more money? You know, like if you're working for a big brand that like, you know, like if they get excited about this, they will spend money on it, then like, yeah, absolutely, I'll try to like pitch my full idea and see if they're down. But there are some instances where like you just know off the jump, you know, maybe it's like a PSA or something where like the budget is super tight and you're like, they could fall in love with this idea, but it's not going to mean more money. It's just going to mean they want it for the same thing. And obviously, like that's not going to happen. But
what have you found has been the biggest challenge? Is it more on the sales and pitching side? Is it the execution side, working with the people? For you personally, where has that landed?
I think
where you're trying to grow.
Yeah, I think like execution after you've done it a certain amount of times and like you have your crew and your collaborators that you like to work with, like that's pretty straightforward. And like I love pitching too. Like I don't find pitching, like I know some directors like hate making treatments and hate pitching. Like I don't know, I'm a people person, I like pitching. The most frustrating part is like when you don't get shortlisted and like all you want to do is pitch and you're like, look, this is kind of the way I look at it. Like if you pitch and you don't get it, like I'm so cool with that because it's like I gave you my idea. I'm always satisfied with my treatments. Like I always get them to a place where I'm like, if they don't like it, like they genuinely don't like it, and that's fine. So like I'm always just looking to pitch. And the frustrating part I think sometimes can be, as a director, especially in the commercial world, being like put into a box, put into a niche, which was like a lesson you learned pretty early on is, like when I first started doing this, I thought the best approach was to be as diverse as possible. So my reel had like food and auto and sports and doc and all of these different genres. And I talked to an EP at a production company and she was like, what are you doing? And I was like, well, like I got everything. She was like, no one wants the jack of all trades. Like they want the sports guy or the doc guy or the food guy. And like as directors, we all know like we can, not to like toot our own horns, but like we can do it all. Like it's still filmmaking. And it's like, not to go on a tangent here, but like when you look at filmmakers, like you have your auteur directors, obviously, like your Fincher and your Anderson and stuff, but like there are directors like Ron Howard or even like Robert Zemeckis who like serve the story. They're not like imposing their style onto something necessarily. And I think in commercial it's the same. Like, yeah, like I do a lot of sport, I do a lot of documentary, But like, luckily, like RBC took a chance on me in the spring. Like I did a comedy ad. It's like, we can do it, but people just want to see you in such a specific lane. And that's the frustrating part, I think, where something will come through or I'll see something on TV. I'm like, man, I would have loved to have been put up for that, but it just won't happen because I think agency people sometimes can be very like narrow-minded in terms of if you don't have something on your reel that's almost exactly what they're looking for, they're probably not going to look at you, which I understand. Like people are risk averse and like everybody's trying to keep their jobs. I get it. But at the same time, like all you want to do is be able to like get in that picture and be like, look, like listen to me. I promise you, like we can do this and it's going to be good. So yeah, for me, I guess like long answer. For me, it's like the most frustrating part is actually like getting in the rooms and being able to convince people that like you can do what you say you can. But yeah, the execution is like pretty straightforward. Once you know your people and you know how you work and you can assemble a crew that is familiar with each other, I feel like the execution is obviously there's always wrenches, but like typically the easiest part, I think.
Challenges over on this Danyal's side of the table?
It has to be challenging because you're a director, you know. I think the biggest one is like confidence. Confidence is a huge one, you know. Sometimes you're on set and like stuff's not going well, and you cannot let anyone know that you're in your head freaking out. And that's the biggest thing. You gotta be like, oh yeah, it looks good. Oh, this is a great take. Bullshit. And to give yourself enough time to like figure out how to like go about it in a different way or talk to your DP after lunch or whatever. So I think sometimes too when you get into those moments, just like keeping confidence and just keeping the energy, the morale up, so you can just make it through the shoot and just not waste everyone's time or like funds or whatever. Is like the biggest thing. So just kind of like keeping your head afloat.
I would say.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that like a challenge for me is I really stress the details, and I'm a big prep guy, and I love to plan it out and do my shot list. Everything's so detailed, and I do that from the beginning. And I think a challenge and something that I've learned with time is knowing when to not necessarily step away, but knowing when to put that effort in and knowing when to do that. And it also applies to like the edit as well. And you know, I think like when you are an artist and a creative person, you put yourself into a project, and in doing that, you care a lot about it. And so kind of a challenge and something I've learned with time is knowing when to like give it a little space, or knowing, and it kind of goes to your thing, John, about like the early stages and a flag. It's like what I don't do as much as I used to is the idea comes in, it's like, oh, I'm going to pour everything into it. Now it's like, okay, I'm going to do the work just as the job starts to come, and let's see if this grows and actually becomes it, and then it gets awarded, and then I'll put all my effort into it. And as I said, it goes like on set too. It's like knowing, it's like, okay, should we spend that extra 15 minutes like steaming the square table, or should we walk away? And like knowing what stuff is going to pay off on screen, what's going to pay off in the campaign. And sometimes we get in a rabbit hole of like, oh, I see that thing in the corner of the frame, but like no one else does. And maybe there's some other great moment that's going to be lost because you're stressing some other detail. But I think a lot of that comes with like experience.
I agree. I totally agree.
Just to build on something you said, Danyal, was about not letting anyone see the stress on your face.
Yeah.
And what do you think, and for all of you, like what is the director's role on set beyond the obvious? Like what type of leadership responsibilities and skills are actually built into the role, which might not be initially apparent to someone who's just focused on the script and executing the creative, but what ultimately becomes your responsibilities on set in order to move the day forward and bigger picture project forward? But if we're just talking about the shoot day, what do you kind of need to know how to do in addition to building the picture and telling the story on camera?
You gotta set an environment. That's the biggest one. Like, if people are miserable and not having a good time, the shoot's gonna go shit, by far. Like, it could be like the stupidest commercial or whatever. Like, if no one is having fun, it's gonna go bad. So I feel like coming in, like playing music, I always play music on my sets. I always like bring like friends on too. Like, just even the PA, just so we could like talk, laugh, like make jokes and stuff like that, and they could spread a little bit of energy. I think with a lot of my sets, I just kind of go for like chemistry over like talent all the time, because I'm like, hey, if there's enough chemistry, even the shots, like we did a shoot here, like we put all our budget into grip. Like that was it. Like we got like Nikki and like all the other dudes, and that's all the money we had really. So a lot of it, like one of the dudes was like 16. Like he was one of my homies, like younger brothers. Like, you want a shot? Like, come on. So we bring them on, and like they're all young, they're all excited to go. So that just is very like, what's the word? Contagious, I guess. Yeah, and vibes, contagious, whatever. And it just makes everyone just have fun. It makes it just a way easier production. When it's like lunchtime, everyone's like cracking jokes, having fun, eating. Cool.
Energy is so important.
Yeah,
I think.
energy is so important.
I'm in that same boat. But like, what's also cool, I'll say, is like if you have crew members who are friends, you're not just working with like a hired hand, you're working with people who actually want to help you out.
Yeah.
Which is like the biggest thing
Changes
when
everything.
you're like running up against the clock and you're stressing out and you're trying not to show it. But like, yeah, there are some times where that's just the nature of it. But your crew are your friends, and so they're like, yo, let's do this for Kevin. Like let's figure this out, or like, yo, you go do this while I do this, because then we'll be able to have time to do that. Like, people willing to make stuff happen, as opposed to like, I've heard stories about people who, you know, the director's like, hey, prep this, and some guy's off doing it, and someone's giving him a suggestion on how to do it faster, and he's like, I'm getting paid either way. And it's like, that is toxic. Like, that's a no-go.
That's a no-go for sure.
Yeah.
I'd say, like, as a director, it's leadership. On set, everyone has very specific jobs. I'm sure, I think a lot of people who are going to watch this have been on set, know that, but it is an industry where people are so specialized, right? And everyone's worried and should be worried about their job. And you as a director is to be the leader and to kind of like the captain of the ship, to make sure everyone is going towards the same destination. So it's looking at it holistically and leading everybody. So like atmosphere and vibe is super important, and being collaborative as well, because you also want all the people around you to feel inspired and encouraged to have great ideas and to bring them to you, right? So yeah, you're the director, it's your vision, it's your idea. If it's a commercial, maybe it's agency as idea, and you're there to help see it through. And it's creating an environment where everyone feels encouraged and inspired to do their best work, to add creatively to it. And then you, as a director, is bringing that up and then leading it to the destination of executing and creating this thing. Because if everyone was left to their own, they would, oh, this would look amazing, or this would be this thing, but it wouldn't work as a whole piece, right? So you're there guiding it.
Just something to throw out there, and this is just from my own personal experience, usually as a producer more than a director, but I find like we personally, let's say, if I'm just going to use the industry metaphor, being a little bit higher up on the call sheet, I think people, PAs or junior people in the industry, they look up to the producer and the director as the people, as the guiding light for the day. I still feel like I'm looking up to the client, like I still have to, serve, I'm here in service of other people as well, and I have found that you need to keep it all in context, because just taking 5 minutes to speak to everybody on set, simply because you want to, it's not just to make conversation, but I think getting on set is the best part, meeting all these personalities. And I find if you take the opportunity at the start of the day, especially if you don't know someone as well, to just take 5 minutes to chat, get to know them, know that their voice is heard, it's important, they're adding value to the set. I think that's kind of like, those are planting some seeds for the good vibes. And I think that we forget, we think we're stressing out or whatever feeling we're having at the start of the day because we have clients or agency to please and to make happy. But there are other people who are trying to make us happy. And not to build this hierarchy, because I think everyone has a role on set, of course, but taking the time literally to talk about your favorite movie or what you just saw on Netflix or like whatever, I feel like that pays disproportionate dividends across the day to get people, to rally people around a common idea or a vision, to make the vibes, immaculate, as the kids say. And so that's just something I've found, in addition to having a great craft table.
Yeah.
Like that's another big secret.
Huge.
We got bananas and mandarins.
I saw that.
Yeah, okay. But to your point, I think when everyone's rallied around a common vision, and everyone kind of likes each other, that's when the magic happens. Because when you're running out of time for a shot or for something to happen, and that one grip or PA, whoever steps up and it's like, yeah, I will stand on the ladder and flag the light because it's got to happen. Those are the moments that it feels really special on set, and that can only happen if everyone feels like respected
Feeling the
and
picture.
empowered.
Yeah, for sure. Totally
Absolutely.
Good, good. Let's talk a little bit about growth as a commercial director. You probably look at your resumes and your portfolios from 5 years ago and be like, oh, this is terrible. Well, at least I do. I look at past work, like, oh, this is all trash. I can't, what was I thinking? But you probably just looking at your own work, recognize your own growth, and I think it's really easy with hindsight to talk about what to do or how to grow, but in the moment, it always feels like a challenge, like I don't know what to do next or what's the next thing I need to work on. So can you just talk a little bit about your growth as a professional and what type of advice or wisdom you would pass on to the next generation of directors or up and coming, like people who are working now, but in a very different time? Like it feels like the climate, the financial climate, like we're not in the stablest of economies at the moment, but does that play into wisdom or advice that you'd provide? And how should people go about building their building their network and just kind of overall professional growth?
For me, what was helpful early on, I think, was networking with people who are kind of on your same level coming up with you. I think with young people, there's like a lot of interest in networking with people who are above you, who can like pull you up, but I don't think there's as much awareness of like, it's important to make your network horizontally too. So like when you guys are coming up, you guys can all do it together, and then having friends who like, you're like, hey, like this Saturday, are you free? Like, do you want to go to Whitby and shoot a Muay Thai spec piece?
Yeah,
like,
that's hard.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so hard.
But when you have like a group of people who are down, and like you can sometimes even do it, like that was a thing that I actually did. We did it with a 4-person crew, and at the time it was like my favorite thing I had ever made. And sometimes those spec pieces for me were the moments where I saw like the biggest jumps in terms of attention from other people in the industry. And I think part of that is there's also no creative restriction, which is awesome. Like you get to show your own voice in the most purest of ways. So for me, like I think my spec pieces, even still to an extent, are like some of my pieces that have like most strongly my own voice. So yeah, like I don't know, I would say like do specs when you can, network with people your own age, and like do favors for people too, right? Like when people need help, even if someone's like, yo, I'm moving, be like, I got hands. Like honestly, like help people out, be kind, and hopefully amazing things will happen.
I was going to totally like echo that about networking and working with people in your peer group. Finding friends or people around you that want to be DPs when you're younger, or love writing and love like photography, cinematography, other directors, other creative people, and work together, help each other. Like, oh, let me read your script. Will you read mine? We're shooting something. Like, you love to film. Like, maybe we need somebody to do photography. We're really lucky to work with this DP, but he or she needs an assistant. Maybe you can come out and assist. And those kinds of things pay off later down the line when that person's now working with this company or this agency, or is repped by this agency, and you're doing something else. So I think that's like so right, that a lot of people, and I don't know where it comes from necessarily, but you think to like, oh, I need to get in the room with like this big Hollywood producer and show them this thing I did in film school, and they'll give me a job directing like a $10 million budget movie, right? It's like that never happens, and maybe it's happened like once in history. But what happens a lot more is that people work together at a similar level and grow together. And I think that's something that I wish I had done more of. I was so, I always knew I wanted to be a director. That's something I've focused on pretty much like since I was in high school. So I was always making stuff and working with people to make things, but less so like what's everybody else doing and what is everybody like my own age, and because it's funny, like we as directors work with a lot of people, but often not with other directors. Yeah. And so you don't get a chance to collaborate across your same job, whereas a lot of people in other industries and even within film, you work with your exact job title and you can learn from each other, right? So like mentorship's important too if you get an opportunity to do that. And then the other thing I would say is similarly like make stuff. it's like cliche sounding, but we all have phones with cameras on them. Even really good cameras are cheap these days. There's a lot of equipment sitting right now because some stuff's not shooting. So have an idea, get your friends, and make it. And I think even more to that, like, don't do everything yourself. Find people that are cool, that do other things, and collaborate and make something.
I agree. I guess for me, it's like, you just gotta get on set. Like, however, like, whether it's like PA or, because like there's only one director on a film, but there's like 2 ACs, 3 ADs, whole grit department, whatever. Some people swing as like DIT and stuff like that. So for like, last summer I did a movie. I was like locations, like just picking up garbage all day long, like picking up garbage like from the top of the street, walking it back down, like whatever tent had to get moved. I was just doing that like the whole time. And that summer I did, like, I'm a photographer as well too, so I was still doing photos. I had a photo in like Times Square that same summer. But it's like, even then removing your ego from it as well too, so you could like go in places and learn and talk to the ACs to see what they're doing. You're hearing the AD every single day in your head, so you're like, okay, this is what the director's communicating, so on, so on. So you gotta be like a student of life. Like, I didn't go to school for film, so you really gotta like be there and learn.
When I started, like, I was making my own films, doing music videos, but PAing on commercials and getting with some, PMs, production managers, and it's definitely not glamorous. And I, like cleaning up,
Humbles
it's like, okay, so here's a
It
giant
humbles you,
field, clean up all the garbage, like that.
Yeah,
that was
like,
a job for a whole morning, but
humbles you.
That's also a way to if you're starting out, to find out like what you like, right? It's like, oh, I love camera, I'm gonna talk to the camera department. And people are nice people in this industry, so they will often like shadow you a little, and you can learn, and it pays off later as a director to understand every job. Like, I'm not an expert, I couldn't light the scene, I couldn't run sound, I couldn't do it, but I know what every job entails, and that makes me better at my job.
Makes you patient too, because you understand, like, you have your DP, you can't be like, all right, we gotta go for pictures up. You can't be rushing him. If he has a vision and he's trying to communicate your vision a certain way, you can't rush him.
Yeah.
It makes you just a completely different person as a director as well.
Totally, yeah, and I was a camera assistant, and I understand camera, and so when the camera department's like needs time, if you don't understand that, you're watching your clock, like, it's a very technical position, and say it's a really like tough focus move, like the person's running and we're back on a car and they're moving back and forth, like that's a crazy focus pull. But if you have no understanding of that, you can be impatient, and then that makes it even harder. So, like, totally, that patience, giving people the time and the space they need to do that great job makes it better. But you have to have, like, seen it to understand it. Also, you can sometimes offer something up. So if a department or somebody's like having trouble with something and you've seen it before, maybe you were an assistant or a PA on a job like 5 years ago and you saw them do the exact same thing, then you can offer that up, right?
When you're looking to build teams, which is, I guess, more of what I do on the regular, to your point, you remember when someone was proactive, and it almost, you might not even know what their role is on set if it's a large crew, but you remembered them being there when it counted, and the positive attitude, and just the can-do attitude, and that sticks with me. And good crew being there for one another, like, it sticks. And I think, funnily enough, or maybe Kevin, you said this earlier about how we all do a little bit of everything, like, just because someone was a grip on a set or PA on a set or whatever it is, that won't preclude me from kind of like going back to them and saying, so what do you actually do? Because I love your vibe, I love your work ethic. What do you want to be doing on set? And then I'm like, okay, let me get this person on set to do this thing, because their work ethic it gels with how we try to create, or I try to create, kind of vibes on set. So for the people, be they up and coming directors or just up and coming film production professionals, what are the benefits of getting on set that don't necessarily show up in your bank account? And let me qualify this by saying, I think, Kevin, you said this earlier, some of the best opportunities that I have ever created for myself were because of work I did for free. Work I did for myself, just to scratch the itch, get the idea out to the world, because the idea in your head or my head that I thought was gonna go viral and ends up being a big womp womp, at least I got it out of my head, and I'm not going to bed every night being like, I gotta get this idea. I got it. So, I mean, keeping your feet moving is like the bedrock of just networking and growth and all the things you're hoping to achieve, I think, as a professional. And so for the people who are just looking for their rate and their role on set, what are some additional benefits that they can realize by just getting on set? Again, if not the paycheck with the amount of zeros that they're hoping for, just practical benefits.
I think it's like outside of knowledge is the obvious one. You just to learn. It's like you're being in class essentially, you know, at like the highest level. I find weirdly enough the productions that have no budget, like for anyone or like even a standard 250, are the best sets to be on, because everyone's there, no one's getting paid, so everyone's ego goes out the window immediately, which is the craziest thing to me. So I kind of like those sets a little bit sometimes, weirdly enough.
Let me ask you a more blunt version of that
Please,
question.
absolutely.
Is working for free in production and film worth it?
Yeah, working for free in film production is absolutely worth it, because it's not about the money, man. You're gonna die and leave it all here. No, real shit. Like, you're not, like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's the experience and like what you could create, and like you could like send it to your parents. Like, they'll be stoked. Oh shit, my kid's doing something. Like, there's a lot more value than like the 250 you'd get from your standard day rate or whatever. If they're like, yo, can you swing, do this? Like, don't make it a fuss, because like I've seen a lot of people throw away relationships over 250. Or like 450, or like, you know, some people are like up there, you can't, that's different, but a lot of like the younger kids come on just acting crazy for no reason. So like outside of that, like, yeah, just take your ego out the window, man. It's not Hollywood. You know?
Same question.
Yeah. Well, I guess, is working for free worth it? And maybe the, you know, tail end of that into what are some benefits that you can realize if you're not getting paid to be there?
I think that, like, short answer is yes. But there's some caveats to it, and one is, I think that this industry, and I've been in it for a while, and I think I was taking advantage of it at times, because I was so eager and so hungry, and I would do things for free and do anything. So I think that it's important that if there is money on a project, everyone should be paid, hands down. It's not that like, oh, these 10 people are making money and these 10 aren't. Mm-hmm. So if you're in a situation where there isn't a lot of money, then everyone takes the same rate, or everyone takes a cut so that everybody gets paid. Because again, I think there's problems with all industries, especially creative ones, because people want to do it so badly that they're taken advantage of. So that's the first caveat. But if it passes the test of like, there is no money and we're doing something because we really want to do it, or if it's a situation where, listen, we're going to pay everybody, or here's an honorarium, you want to come out, we want to have you, you are valuable to us, but we don't have the budget, it's for sure worth it. And I think it's like with everything in life, you look, and I don't know who said this exactly, but you look at it as like money, experience, and opportunity, right? Those are like the three things. And if a job gives you all three, that's the best, right? If you can get 2 of the 3, you should do it. If you can only get 1, you have to like think about it. So if the money's gone, are you getting experience and opportunity from it? And yeah, that's kind of, it's a long-winded way, but like I really look at everything with like, what are those 3 things? And sometimes, sure, you're not getting paid, but you're gonna learn a ton. And it's like, you know, you've PA'd, but you really love camera. There's a DP or a camera assistant who's like, I'm on this big show. I can't technically bring you on, but like, come out, help me, and you know, I'll give you a bit of my money or something, right? Like that's a great opportunity. You're gonna learn, you're getting opportunity, that's great. And you're also like networking with that team, and maybe they see how hard a worker you are, so that's like future potential there too, right? So I think it's being smart. Again, we love what we do, that's why we're here. And people, you know, there's gonna be a lineup around the block to do what we do, to be a director, right? So sometimes people fall into a trap of like, I'll do anything, and they end up doing everything but.
Yeah, like, should you work for free? Yeah, I think there's like a time and a place. I mean, maybe this is bad to say on camera, but like, I've had projects where I like so strongly believe in the vision, and I'm so like, I so want it to be what I know it can be, that like, I've offered to donate my rate back to the production. Because like, I actually like, there are some jobs where you're strictly like, okay, storyboards are done, you know, we're doing like a 30-second ad for Chevron motor oil. It's like, I'll take the pay and we'll do what you want to do, and like, that's cool. We're still gonna make it as good as we can, but it's less like creatively for you. And then you'll get one where you're like really fired up and you're like, I don't even care about the money on this anymore. Like, I just want this to be good. So yeah, that is definitely a case where I think sometimes you should be, willing to do that. Or I was listening to an interview with Miles J recently, and he was talking about like losing money on some of his early work, like he did a semi-spec for IMG Academy, and he did a music video for Leon Bridges, which ended up going and getting a Grammy nomination, but like was like putting his own money into this stuff. So yeah, like if you think it's really gonna help your reel, then yeah. And in terms of relationship, like there are so many times where, like the very first thing that I ever shot for Adidas was like for pennies. It was like the rate was brutal, but it was also under the understanding that they were like, let's have this be like kind of a test run, and if it goes well, we'll keep working together. And it went well, and the next time we worked together, they offered me like 3 times that, and then 2 times that, and then 2 times that, and by the end, like we were making big commercials. So yeah, there's definitely like a time and a place to do things for free.
And I think, sorry, just to like speak to that too, I think it also really depends too. If it's your project, if it's like your thing that you wrote or that you're directing and it's your vision, it's like do it for free. Pay everyone else first, then yourself, because that's for you, right? But if it's about getting on set or it's about working for someone else, you got to really think about that and again look at those 3 R's or look at the 3 things I said and think about and also making and like are they also helping you, right? Are they taking advantage of you or are they helping you? And I think that we're probably all fortunate that we've been lucky to have people that have helped us in those situations, but I also know stories, and even myself, where I know I in hindsight or realize like after the fact that like, no, I was just taken advantage of.
Yeah.
But even still sometimes, like on ones like that, sometimes I have a tough time saying no sometimes, because even on those ones where you're like, oh, I kind of got burnt, you're like, yeah, but I met that grip who was like really dope, or like,
Totally, but you should have been paid.
No, yeah. For sure. I guess I just mean like in general, sometimes it's like, I think I look back and I look at all the small twists and turns life takes, and you're like, oh, like if I hadn't done that, I never would have met this person, and then that would have never led to that. So even when there's projects that seem like maybe you should stay away, I'm always like, oh, but maybe something good will come from it, which is maybe overly optimistic, but.
But I mean, the common theme around almost everything we're discussing is just keeping your feet moving. Because if you say no to the job, you're sitting on your couch.
Yeah.
And that's the other side. So if we had a crystal ball and could know which fork in the road to take or which project, whatever, I'm sure we'd all be, we'd be having this discussion at my chalet overlooking the. I'm not even gonna. Yeah, I'm not gonna come up with an adequately sarcastic joke here, but yeah, I think it is just keeping your feet moving, because you can trace back probably your biggest opportunities to a single decision by just being on that particular set that day, or just deciding, hey, I'm going to take this idea out of my head, I'm going to put it on paper, and I'm going to shoot it, and that just started some type of engine. I mean, I think every experience you have is built on a previous one, and you only lose if you stop moving your feet, or if you say no to too many opportunities. I want to make a statement right now, and I'd like to hear your opinions on it through the lens of commercial production, but you can also relate it back to your own just kind of creative aspirations and excellence.
Okay.
The statement is, good enough is good enough. Do you agree with that statement?
Depends on the budget. Depends on the budget. That's just it. Like,
what does that mean to you? What does good enough is good enough mean to you?
It's like, this is the most we could get out of this production with the budget we have. With the crew we have, with the budget we have, the manpower, like, this is the max. And I'm not gonna overexert myself or my crew to do something for a client that doesn't have enough budget to put this for. That's how I feel. I don't feel that about my personal work for sure at all, because like that's a representation of me, but like, I don't like hearing that, but sometimes it is what it is. Like you only do so much. That's just it.
Sometimes those lines get blurred though, where it's like a representation of you, or like if there's a commercial you're working on where like, yeah, it's for a client, but you're like, but damn, this would be sick on my reel if we did it the right way.
And it's never the right way, so you just gotta say no. That's a big thing too. It's weird, like at like this stage, like before you're doing all this free work, to now you're like, okay, this is not gonna work, or like I don't think I can stretch this budget. Before you're like, okay, I can stretch 7, I can stretch 6, and like you end up losing money, you're taking money out of your pocket, you know. So I think like weirdly enough, now we're getting to the point that like saying no is not a bad thing, but I would, if I could, I prefer not to do like good enough is good enough.
I think commercials, you have a client, right? So whether you're speaking directly with the brand or whether you're going through the agency. So to me, the good enough is like all you can control in life is what you do, right? So I'm always going to do my best, like full stop, my best job, my best work as much as I can. And so as long as I can walk away knowing I did my best within given the resources and the time that I have, then I'll be happy. And if to them, they want to stop it early, or they want to say, oh, stop there, Daniel, this is good enough for us, we don't want you to do any more, then that's out of your control, and you just have to walk away knowing I did the best with what I could. So I think that is fine. I think the problem is when you start, as the creative person or the director, start saying that in your own head. If you're like, oh, this is good enough, that's a problem. I never want to say good enough to myself. But if someone else wants to say it, like, what can I do?
Kind of building on what Daniel said about, I never want good enough to be good enough for me. I always want to be able to make it the best it possibly can be. I look at some of these opportunities that I lose because I almost poured too much of my own aspirations into a brief or into a pitch. And I don't know, maybe I just didn't ask enough questions, but the outcome was no job, right? Yeah. And so I have a hard time assessing how much time to put into an idea, not knowing what do they want to see from me at this stage of the process. And Daniel talked about this earlier about how, his efforts cascade based on how likely it is the project is his or is happening in the first place. And so that's a challenge I've had, I guess, if I'm to simplify that thought, is when to kind of kiss, just keep it simple based on the stage of the process it's at, and when to really kind of let your flag fly, if you will, so that you're putting your seal or stamp on the idea.
It depends on the creative for me.
Yeah.
And, it's just like the client gives you the tools and the resources to win, you could do it by all means. I'm sure like a lot of us do a lot with like whatever resources. We all have an ideal budget in our head that but if it's not there, it's not there. And I think that's when, like, the problem is too, when you try to like stretch these amounts and it doesn't work or whatever, like it still hurts your pride as a director, because like you still want to do a good job, and when you don't do a good job, it affects your confidence, affects your confidence with the relationship or whatever, and you gotta like avoid those as well too. You gotta like pick your battles. Like, you can't just go all willy-nilly. You're going to burn out, and it's gonna, like, last thing you want to do is just lose confidence as a director, because then it's hard. It's hard to like be like, all right, guys, everyone come on set for this one project. It's one idea that I have, and it doesn't work out. So, I feel what you're saying, but it has to be kind of realistic.
Earlier we talked about kind of red flags and green flags, about whether projects go or not. Do all projects that go, is a client, agency, or brand able to give you a budget? If they're trying to play poker with you, by saying, hey, just give us your best idea and roughly what it might cost. Is that a red flag, or do those jobs happen sometimes?
Depends. You got like it just depends on it's just like such a variable. Is like annoying. That's the weird thing about this job. It's like every single time you come into like your workplace is like a variable. It's like that's part of your job though. Like as a professional, as directors, you gotta make like stuff realistic as well too. So if the client you're working with, it has like at least $30K for this like creative, be like, okay, maybe we could do, I don't know, like 2 videos for like this 30. And it at least helps them sleep a little bit easier at night.
But but they should be able to answer the question of, hey, what's the budget, or what's the budget range? Is that a prerequisite to participating?
It's lovely. I'm sure we all agree, but at the end of the day, like they're that's their job. Like my job's to direct, their job's to keep everything at cost. So they can't be like, oh, we have $200,000. I will max that immediately because you told me that. Like, who the hell wouldn't? So I get their job as well too. I get the shoes they're in. So
any thoughts on that in terms of budget?
Yeah, I think that it's, when I'm hired as a director, usually there's a budget already attached to it, right? I mean, your job is different if you're the producer or if you're the agency or you're going direct to client. Like, you're pitching something that's different, right? And yeah, I've been in both, and I've been on that side a bit, and I've been in both situations where the client will say, we have this much money, what can you do with it? And then another being like, give us your idea, and then be like, oh, what is it going to cost, right? And sometimes if you're up against, they're like, we're taking bids from other people, then you're playing that crazy game of chicken with yourself, with like, okay, so do I put what I think it should really cost in the highest amount, because I want to make this amazing thing, but is the other person going to do less? And it's actually something with, so I also work in like longer form scripted stuff, and I've applied for lots of grants before. Also, back when Much Fact existed, dating myself, there was a lot of grant writing in that. And I think I used to think that, oh, like let's do pitch a smaller budget, because like if it's a lesser budget, they'll go for it. And you realize that at least like juries, and I think it also applies to brands and these people, if they have money, it's about the idea. They'll find the money. So my approach is ask for the money or bid the budget that is appropriate to the creative, because if they love the creative, they'll find the money. And if they can't find the money, but they love the creative, then you'll work together to make something with the money they have. But I think it's like, essentially like fighting against yourself. I'm gonna give them the cheapest idea I can, doesn't really get people excited usually.
There have been jobs even actually where like a company will come to me that I have a working relationship with, and I'll say to them like, thank you for keeping me in mind, like I appreciate this, but like I just genuinely think this is set up to fail given like timeline or budget, and so like respectfully would like to pass. I did that, the first time I did that I was really scared that they were gonna be like, how dare you be so ungrateful? But they were actually like really impressed with it. They were like, wow, like we can't believe that you didn't just jump at taking the job. But at the end of the day, for me, like I don't want to end up being set up to fail and then make something that a bunch of people are going to see and be like, that's representative of who Kevin is as a director.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah.
Well, and B2B and corporate work is an entirely different
Yeah.
beast than commercial work, because at least commercial work has a bit of a format and a system to work within, whereas corporate is like, you see yourself as a director, you are quite literally competing against the film school grad with the DSLR when, I'm sorry to say, good enough is good enough.
Totally,
For
yeah.
a lot of corporate clients
Yeah.
who are not creating brand assets,
Yeah.
good enough is good enough, and an extra $500 on grip gear is completely lost on them, whereas that could be the difference between something that's dramatic, has a bit of a docu style to it, and something that's just kind of like flat, no texture picture, which is perhaps a hallmark of your work, that you make the image look good. B2B, they're just like, what are the words? Are they saying the thing that we want them to say? And it's rare to find, I think, B2B clients, and not direct to brand work, but I just mean kind of like corporate clients who really value production value. They're really about the message, like in the tactical aspects of it, and they don't always see the value in investing an extra X in camera department or hair and makeup or all of these auxiliary departments, which ultimately add to the production value.
Well, even sometimes I think with like well-established consumer-facing brands that happens. Like in the early days when I was doing kind of like that one-man band thing, I was working for like a really big consumer brand everybody knows, and we were shooting an event for them. And they were like, can you do photography as well? I was like, totally, but like, I'll bring a photographer because I don't want to be going back and forth. And
It's like switch it to photo mode.
Yeah, that's exactly
just
right. So I was like, I would bring a photographer. It would be X amount, and they like didn't really get back to me. I was like, hey, like, do you guys still want to do photo? I need to know if I'm going to lock somebody in. They're like, no, it's all good. Like Brad from accounting's sister has a DSLR. He's just going to snap some photos. I'm like, that is not the same thing at all.
Yeah, that's completely
okay,
different.
like if that's what you want. But I was like so shocked that I was
It's
like,
a commodity to them, though. It's not, there's no levels to it.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
photo or no photo. And how it gets done is almost
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just an asset on it. It's just a checklist. Like, did we get photos? Check. Right?
Yeah.
I felt so bad at the event. I remember going up to that guy and being like, let me just set your settings at least. Because he's using like some
expose
rebel,
it.
like
Yeah.
doesn't know what he's doing.
It's
I'm
in
looking,
video
it's-
mode.
The
I'm
white
gonna do the
balance,
video, yeah.
white balance is all like orange. Everything looks terrible. I'm like, let me just help you out. I just felt bad at that point.
And now that guy's a professional photographer.
Yo, know what's funny is that guy actually is a professional photographer now. That is actually like, a
Amazing.
crazy, wild thing. This was a dude who was always super passionate. And it's funny because the story didn't age well, because at the time I was like, this guy, like, who does he think he is taking photos? And now I look at his Instagram, I'm like, he's actually kind of doing something.
Yeah, he's doing something.
Yeah.
It sounds like the guys we were talking about earlier, just trying to get their foot in the door.
Yeah, yeah.
They're just like little young bulls and whatnot. You know?
Yeah, was just like working accounting and realized like, oh shit, I'm a creative.
If we can go like 101 for a minute, because I think we're talking about a lot of just advanced problem solving that goes into selling things and making things as your career grows. But can we just talk really quickly about treatments for 1 second? I'd just love to hear about how you guys see your treatments, and for individuals who are just kind of just coming up and may have not heard or know what a treatment is. I mean, the treatment is basically your vision on paper. You know, a client or a brand says, hey, I want to tell a specific story, and the treatment is kind of like, well, here's what the pictures are going to look like, here's how I'm going to light it, here's what the sound design looks like. It's basically giving as much color, flavor, and context to your vision on paper, usually without moving visuals, sometimes with static visuals, like in photos, to just, kind of sell the idea and visualize the idea. But it's really your best kick at the can on paper, so that if you get hired, the client knows, hey, this is what this guy's approach is going to look like. And so I think different directors have different approaches to their own treatments and the way that they try to sell their ideas through. Could you talk to us a little bit about your own individual style and treatments, and what you have found to be the most helpful component to a treatment that helps you sell through your ideas? And it's not to say that everybody should do this one thing, because I think it's all about how you communicate your ideas on paper, but what are some things that have worked for you in terms of showcasing your idea as vividly and as meaningfully as possible in a treatment when you're in a pitch situation, especially in a triple bid situation where 3 different directors are also giving it their all, and you need to find a way to stand out?
Who wants to go first?
Yeah, let's work our way around.
I think for me, it's like this might sound so like silly, but it's like really beyond the language. But the specifics of the language is like making sure that the way I can write my treatment is for someone that like doesn't know film, similar to like a book or something like that. You know, if you're trying to explain something to someone, you have to make it as easy as possible and as much visuals. Or I started adding GIFs as well too. So, like when I take my reference, I'll just make it a GIF.
Yeah.
All the time, so that way it's like moving, and people.
What about
like that
memes?
shit. Yeah, memes. Like, yeah, exactly. So, I feel like I really enjoy writing treatments. You're just communicating, and that way too. Like when your crew's reading it, whether they're like new or old, like everyone kind of gets it, and then it also helps guide your shot list as well too, so that your DP gets it, your grip gets it, your gap. It really helps with the client, and it really helps with your crew. So just find like the middle ground and like enough. Like you don't want to think too much, but you don't want to think too little. Just finding like that like really sweet middle ground is like my favorite for like treatment.
So simplifying the language to kind of the lowest common denominator, if you will, just so everyone gets it.
That yeah,
works
like
for
writing
you.
it like it's like a book, like a story, like similar to any like book we read, like a Jack Kerouac book or something like that. Like really writing it in the way that like it flows like a story or like a song or something. That's the way I look at it for sure.
Yeah, I think like a lot of the stuff you said, like it should have visuals for sure, like photos, links, like that's so important. Also, also to what you were saying, Daniel, like it's easy to write a lot, and you want to try to convey it in like the least amount of words possible. Because first of all, everybody is like doesn't have a lot of time, and people are kind of lazy, and they get a lot of things. So, sometimes it's easy to write a page about the camera movement or the style or the comedy references or whatever. But if you can distill that down to like 2 or 3 lines, that's way more effective. And it's harder to do. Like often my first drafts of my treatments are very, very long, and then it's just like grinding it down, shaping it. And then the other thing that's really important that I think is lost sometimes is is communicating tone with a treatment. So, you know, you can, if you use the wrong images, use the wrong language, it can sometimes feel like a bad example is that, oh, it comes off like a horror movie because there's a lot of like references of some modern aesthetic in horror that you like, but it's not for something that's supposed to be scary. It's supposed to be a really lighthearted thing. And so somebody like, yeah, the words are there and the images are kind of right, separate, but put all together, it doesn't feel like the thing you're trying to make. So often what I'll do is like I'll do my treatment and then I'll step away and come back and look at it and be like, you know what, I need to change some of these images. I need to change the order of something so that it really gives off the tone. And I think working in like longer form storytelling has helped me with that, and it's something that is so important, like it's just tone. And that's a tough thing to communicate in general, right? So how does something like feel, how does it look, like all those things that are sometimes not really easily communicated, you have to try and communicate in a number of pages.
So simplifying the language, using as few words as possible, and also effectively using your words and the images to sell the feeling.
Yeah,
and
it's
the
using
tone.
the right ones. And there might be a beautiful image or picture of something that you love, but if it doesn't speak to the vision or to the creative you're trying to make, you shouldn't use it. Sometimes something else works a lot better. So it's not always about what is the coolest looking thing. So what's the right thing?
For sure. Yeah, I love the treatment process. I looked at the treatment almost like, again, not to be pretentious with it, but I heard Tarantino say once he writes a screenplay for the screenplay to exist as its own thing. And for me, treatments are that too. When I finish a treatment I'm psyched with, I sit back and I just look at it. I scroll through it. I love a well put together treatment. Obviously, conveying tone is so important. One of the ways that I try to dial in on that is you have your static visual references or your GIFs, but then I'll also put links to full references. But I'll always specify what part of that I like. So on my reference, it won't just be the link in the thumbnail. It'll say I like this one because of the edit. I like this one because of the score. I like this one because of the color. So rather than someone looking at the whole thing and being like, this is exactly what we can expect. It's no. From that one, just take edit. From that one, just take setting. From that one, just take performance. So yeah, trying to get your vision as distilled as possible. It can be difficult because all you really have to work with are things that already exist, and putting that into something that you're now going to make something new. It's it can be really difficult sometimes.
When it comes to treatments and selling that idea, I think someone touched on this earlier about a lot of times agencies or clients will say, hey, where is the spot I'm trying to make in your portfolio? And if you don't have it in your portfolio, you have mixed feelings about it. Should I try to express my idea to try to sell it through, knowing that if you don't get it, you'll be like, well, and the guy who did or gal who did get it had it in their portfolio or reel. I know that's a big challenge, at least when I'm pitching on things. And so my question is, if you don't have the thing they're trying to make in your portfolio where you can reference, here's how I did it last time, does that change your approach to building a treatment? Do you feel you need to double down on aspects or elements of what they're trying to create that you might not have direct experience with?
It's about saying it's about saying what you are versus what you're not, right? And we have a wealth of experience both in the work that we've done and our lives. So it's about speaking to the experience you have in those ways that will help it. So maybe you didn't do a car commercial if it's a car brief, but you did a scene in something else that had a car, and you can speak to that experience. Or you're a photographer as well. So yeah, maybe I didn't shoot a commercial like this, but look at the photography I've done. So I think people can tell when you're faking it or when you're pretending. So I think it's, talk about what you have done and can do, and then what that experience is going to bring to making it better. And if you can do that, then maybe you don't get it, but at least you can walk away being again, this thing coming back to I did my best. Versus if you just pretend or show them something really bad that you did that's kind of like it versus your best work. Show your best work and be this is why I'm good, and this is why these skills will help this commercial.
One time what I did was I didn't have like what the client was looking for or whatever, but like I was good friends with a DP that like had it. So I'm like, oh, like I pitched him an idea. I'm like, yo, and to like make this come to light, I have this DP who's gonna come on. I already talked to him about it before. So sometimes it's like you gotta get a little creative and just like find like if you don't have it, like find a crew member that has it. Like someone on this earth has it, you know. So
It's interesting. You like just a quick look. Hey, our odds are improved if we team up on something
that's
because
what it is. Yeah. You know, they're like, oh, they have their crew, they have this camera package, whatever, and then the clients like they're like, all right, cool. So sometimes it's just like I just try to get creative with like how I get the gig, as opposed to like just shooting the gig itself.
And I think everyone loves confidence.
Yeah.
Right. So as long as you're presenting what that solution looks like, why it's not going to be a pain in the ass
Yeah.
to the
and it's probably
to the
gonna be a pain
clients.
in the ass for sure, but like you can't let them know that for sure.
Right.
But yeah.
But I think that's an interesting insight that people don't often consider because it's like, hey, just cut the pie in half, you know, metaphorically speaking, and then you'll get the job, or you have a better chance of getting the job versus trying to, you know, twist your experience in a way that can probably BS your way into ultimately not getting the gig, but like, you know, feeling good that you were able to kind of put your best foot forward, or a foot forward.
Yeah, everyone wins with that one. Like your DP wins, you know, your DP gets a good gig, like he has to add to his reel. You get to add to your reel as a director.
And that probably builds your relationships as well too, right?
Trust me, it's the best way to go. Like I try to work with as much like DPs as I can, like in like the best way. You know, sometimes it's like, okay, this teacher works for this, like that's what it is. But if I don't got it, I just do that.
We'll do a quick fire last question here, just to end on a relevant note, but perhaps not the most inspiring note, which is I think we're all aware that the film and production industry over the past year has been a challenging one. You know, I think this has been a big year of work with what you've got, as opposed to kind of big new ideas. And so a lot of projects have either really small budgets, end up dying before they make it to camera. And so I think it's been one of those years where we've all kind of had to look in the mirror and say, okay, like what do I do well? Like who are my best clients? Like where do my relationships exist so I can just, you know, just keep working. From, you know, studios to talent to crew. I mean, I have felt it across the entire industry this year, this has just not been a friendly one. I mean, I think the good news is, AI notwithstanding, that storytelling is a universal thing, and it will continue to drive marketing, advertising, filmmaking, and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think the machines are coming for us just yet. But that's not to say that we don't need to pivot and reevaluate what value we add to our industry and to our clients when the money's just not quite there. And so could you leave us with the one thing that you did over the past year when, not to say that y'all weren't working consistently, but let's assume it was maybe a little bit less than it has been in kind of the glory years of 2022 and 2021. What's one thing that you did to both keep your tool sharp, keep your spirits up, and maybe even kind of carve out a couple jobs that may not have existed if you weren't as hungry as you were in the past year? Because I think we all felt it, but I'll just be the one to say it out loud. So just one thing that you guys did that really helped keep the engine on and keep your feet moving. Let's start over here.
Yeah, I find when times are quiet, I do two things. I funnel into my own passion projects because it's like I finally have time to just focus on that. So for me, it's writing or creating treatments about passion projects. I shot a short documentary in March that, like, you know, helps keep things sharp, and that was like going off the back of a commercial production, a photo shoot that I had done for Subway, and I basically just took that Subway money and put it straight into that. So it's like, in terms of real, you know, you're getting your commercial job, but then you're having that money then fund like the next thing as well. So for me, that was useful. And when I'm not like doing those passion projects or ideating what's gonna come next outside of the commercial work, it's just networking, like reaching out to people, grabbing coffees, like as much as possible, trying to meet people and see who you vibe with and who you could potentially collaborate with in the future. That felt like that was like my whole winter. It was just like driving places for coffee, basically. And now, like, it seems like things are starting to turn a little bit, and maybe partly that's like, you know, finally seeing the benefits of like all that networking. But yeah, I think like the more people you can interact with that are in the industry, for better or for worse, like eventually it'll all come around. And yeah, get yourself out there. It's one thing I tell myself is that like it's part of the job, especially when there's like parties or networking events on like a Tuesday night. Like most of the time, I'm sitting at home like I would love to just like order a pizza and watch a movie, but like I have to remind myself like no, this is like genuinely part of the job.
Networking is
100%. Like the amount of times I'll go to a networking night at like Ted's or like an editing house is holding a party or something, and it's like I end up meeting someone that leads to something. It's like irresponsible for me to not go to those things. So like sometimes I'll call my friends and be like, you're going out on a Tuesday? I'm like, no, like I'm drinking sodas and networking. Like it's not about partying, it's like, it's the job.
pineapple on your pizza or no?
Sometimes, it depends. Haven't done that in a minute, but I don't have like a polarizing take on that like some people. I'm take it or leave it.
Right. How you keep your tools sharp when things aren't churning.
Yeah, I think it comes back a bit to something I said before of you can't control things that are out of your control, right? All you can do is what you are capable of doing. So for me, it was, there's a couple people I love to collaborate with. I love writing with people. So it was working on some projects, one in particular with Catherine Naker. She's an amazing writer and a comedian, and we have a half-hour comedy that we're developing. And we'd kind of already started working on it, and we got some more momentum this year and recently pitched it out. We were at JFL with it. We were talking to lots of people, and that wouldn't have come about if we didn't have some time to really dive into it and really focus on it. And then another project I'm working on with Adam Cook. He's a fantastic writer and a DP. Similar thing, like we have something we've been working on for a while. We got a chance to essentially go to like a cabin and work on it. Like we took some time and really just like singularly focus on that. And now we're out pitching that and looking for a broadcaster. And something I did with that project that I haven't done a lot of, but we did, because it has a documentary element to it, we did shoot a teaser for it with like longer form scripted stuff. I don't do that because it's a long story, but it's hard to like, for something that's comedy or narrative, but it is a higher budget thing, it's sometimes I think that works against you. It's much more about the script. But with something that's like documentary or unscripted, it's often you can make something. So long story short, we went out and shot a 2-minute teaser for it. That really helped to like drive home the creative and helped us to sell it to talent, sell it to broadcasters, producers, and now that has legs. And so doing that work, is work within your control. So yeah.
I don't know. Well, I just try to live life. I know it sounds like super like cliche and stuff, but really not trying to be burnt out is like the most important thing is in this industry. So like when I have downtime, like I go ride, I go skateboard, I go take photos of like something completely different. So when like, someone calls you up or you're ready to go for something, like you're good. And you're not caught in the middle of something, or you're not like in the middle of a different country or some shit like that. Like you're just here and you're ready and you're just like recharge the battery. So I think I just just try to live life, because this industry can be kind of like grueling at times. So that's a big one.
And you probably come back to the work with new energy.
Watching movies.
It's not always
and stuff
about
like that.
grinding.
Yeah, it's not always about grinding. Sometimes grinding is like just taking your foot off. That blew my mind. It's like you go watch a movie. I'm like, I never thought to do that. You know?
You need to consume as well.
Yeah. As much as you want to produce, you got to consume, so you can like have like a story to tell or like see how new stories are evolving. So, like I really try to do that as much as I can.
And only because you said it, what's your your favorite thing you've seen streaming lately?
I don't have Netflix.
What's your favorite movie you've seen lately?
I can tell you my favorite movie. The Warriors 1979. That's one of my favorite movies of all time. Old Boy 2001. Being John Malkovich. There's this movie called Love Exposure. This Japanese movie came out in 2008. That movie's phenomenal. It's 4 hours long, but like that movie's the most inspirational movie because like it's like really 4 hours long. Like when like there's like cameras and boom mics in it, like they really just focus on the story. It's the first time I've seen anything like
It's like
like they but the story's like it's like airtight. It's the sickest story ever. So I just watch movies. I bought like an older like CRT TV to watch like old movies with and shit. So I'll just like really just lock in and watch movies on my downtime.
So that's a vibe. That's a full.
That's how it goes.
Yeah.
It's a time machine.
Favorite thing you've seen lately streaming?
Lately,
or in film?
Like lately, streaming, I loved Beef, the Netflix one, and also Bear I really like. So two B short titled things that are very different, but both fantastic.
Cool.
Yeah, I just finished season 2 of The Bear as well, and that show is phenomenal. I'm like rewatching it constantly. I'm like studying the episodes. It's so well done.
I thought it was a documentary when I first saw it.
Yeah, well, it's funny. Like there are some episodes where like they take a bit of a doc approach. Like I just watched an awesome Thomas Flight breakdown on like the editing in that show. Anyway, show's amazing.
Yeah, the pacing is crazy. The way they use
Yeah.
pace is,
Like one of the best edited shows I've seen recently. And then this is a different one, but Swamp Kings, the untold Netflix documentary
the
on
sports
the
one?
Florida Gators. I was a big football kid and loved that Gators team. Like that
The Tim
that
Tebow
team.
team?
Pardon?
Like 369 Timbo?
The Tim Tebow, like Percy Harvin, Brandon
okay,
Spikes, like Aaron Hernandez, Pouncey Twins. Like for me, that was like when I was in high school and I like idolized. They're like only like 4 or 5 years older than me, but it was like the perfect time for me to love that team. And for years, I've been like, it would be so cool to work on something like that. And then it came out, so I was like, okay, I'll just be a consumer. But it was great.
What about you, John?
Oh, favorite thing I've seen? Damn, it's harder to answer the questions than ask them.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I just saw thing I watched most recently. I just watched Painkiller, which was good. Actually, my friend Laura's in it. It was awesome. She plays Matthew Broderick's secretary, I think. What I liked about it, though, and a thing, I wouldn't say it's on the whole, it's my favorite thing I've seen, but one thing that I saw that felt new, especially because it's based on a real story, but it is scripted, is that before every episode, there was a survivor story. So basically, if someone's parents came on screen and said, hey, the story you're about to watch is fictionalized, but what's not fiction is my daughter who got hooked on opioids and died at 20 or something like that. And it was just this really fascinating reminder, even though things that are based on a true story, you don't always feel the connection to real life, but to have like surviving family members open every episode with a heartfelt, direct address to the audience, really, it pulled me right back in. And I thought that was just as a storytelling technique to kind of break the fourth wall a little bit. I thought it was a really, really effective way to make me care about the characters on
It
screen.
reminds me kind of like those like 90s sitcoms or whatever when they'll have like the PSA before.
Yeah.
Like Mr. Rogers or like Steve Urkel will be like, hey, we're gonna talk about like drugs or whatever your shit. But it's cool though, like that cinema, like I think is really interesting, just being like just blunt. You know, I'm not trying to hide everything, do like metaphors and similes or whatever.
Yeah.
Just being straightforward.
And just as a sign off, everyone's favorite part of content like this is if we want more information about you, where can we find more information about you fine folks?
I just have Instagram. I don't know.
So what's
My Instagram is PR Barton. That's it. It's like an Emerson icon.
you like to be elusive. So
I
you
know,
gotta
honestly,
catch
like
me if you can.
No, I just made Instagram like I didn't make it for photography. I just had it and just started posting photos. Like I never learned the app. Like I really don't know what I'm doing on it.
Where can we
Yeah,
find more?
Instagram, Dan AM Rosenberg. That's my handle.
And website.
DanielAMRosenberg.com.
Keep it simple.
Yeah.
I only got to remember one name.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, my handle is kc.productions, and then the website is kcproductions.video. It's a weird one, but yeah,
It's a
.video.
new one.
Yeah.
Helps you stand out, I'm sure. It's like, oh, it's the video guy.
It's a pain for online forums sometimes. Where it's like, this is not a real email. It's like, well, it sure is.
Yeah,
so
sure it is.
maybe just take it.
I seen .love the other day.
Yeah, there's a bunch of weird ones.
Yeah, people were really going crazy.
Yeah.
I saw
I
him at Hotmail.
went wild with .video, but yeah.
Cool. Well, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to spend here today. I thought this was really nice conversations, lots to chew on for ourselves and hopefully for the folks who are able to take this in either in its full form or in small little snackable moments. But once again, thank you guys so much for contributing
Thanks for
here.
having
And
us.
Yeah, thank
I had
you.
a lot of fun, and we'll see you same bad time, same bad channel 1 year from today.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Thanks,
Yeah.
guys.